Good evening and welcome to another reading of 1001 Nights. My name is Saman and I'll be your host this evening. And without further ado, as Joanna likes to say, I am going to start the reading. Enjoy. Now when it was the 507th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the merchant sewed up the mule's belly on Janshah, and, withdrawing to a distance, hid himself in the skirts of the mountain. After a while, a huge bird swooped down on the dead mule, and snatching it up, flew up with it to the top of the mountain, where it set down the quarry and would have eaten it. But Janshah, feeling the bird began to feed, slit the mule's belly and came forward. When the bird saw him, it took fright at him and flew right away, whereupon he stood up and, looking right and left, saw nothing but the carcasses of dead men, mummied by the sun, and exclaimed, 'There is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious, the great.' Then he looked down the precipice and espied the merchant standing at the mountain foot, looking for him. As soon as the Jew caught sight of him, he called out to him, 'Throw me down of the stones which are about thee, that I may direct thee to a way whereby thou mayest descend.' So Janshah threw him down some 200 of the stones, which were all rubies, chrysolites, and other gems of price. After which he called out to him, saying, 'Show me the way down, and I will throw thee as many more.' But the Jew gathered up the stones, and binding them on the back of the mule, went his way without answering a word, and left Janshah alone on the mountain top. When the prince found himself deserted, he began to weep and implore help of heaven, and thus he abode 3 days. After which he rose and fared on over the mountainous ground 2 months' space, feeding upon hill herbs, and he ceased not faring till he came to its skirts, and espied afar off a wadi full of fruitful trees, and birds harmonious singing the praises of Allah, the One, the Victorious. At this sight he joyed with great joy, and stayed not his steps till, after an hour or so, he came to a ravine in the rocks, through which the rain torrents fell into the valley. He made his way down the cleft till he reached the wadi which he had seen from the mountain top, and walked on therein, gazing right and left, nor ceased so doing until he came in sight of a great castle towering high in the air. As he drew near the gates, he saw an old man of comely aspect and face, shining with light, standing thereat with a staff of carnelian in his hand, and going up to him saluted him. The sheikh returned his salam and bade him welcome, saying, 'Sit down, O my son.' So he sat down at the door of the castle, and the old man said to him, 'How camest thou to this land, untrodden by son of Adam before thee, and whither art thou bound?' When Janshah heard his word, he wept bitterly at the thought of all the hardships he had suffered, and his tears choked his speech. Quoth the sheikh, 'O my son, leave weeping, for indeed thou makest my heart ache.' So saying, he rose and set somewhat of food before him, and said to him, 'Eat.' He ate and praised Allah Almighty, after which the old man besought him, saying, O my son, leave weeping, for indeed thou makest my heart ache. So saying, he rose and set somewhat of food before him and said to him, Eat. He ate and praised Allah Almighty, after which the old man besought him, saying, O my son, I would have thee tell me thy tale, and acquaint me with thine adventures. So Janshah related to him all that had befallen him from first to last, whereat the Sheikh marvelled with exceeding marvel. Then said the prince, Prithee inform me, who is the lord of this valley, and to whom doth this great castle belong? Answered the old man, Know, O my son, this valley and all that is therein, and this castle with all it containeth, belong to the Lord Solomon, son of David, on both be peace. As for me, my name is Sheikh Nasr, king of the birds. For thou must know that the Lord Solomon committed this castle to my charge. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 508th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sheikh Nasr pursued, Thou must know that the Lord Solomon committed this castle to my charge, and taught me the language of birds, and made me ruler over all the fowls which be in the world, wherefore each and every come hither once in the 12th month. And I passed them in review, then they depart, and this is why I dwell here. When Janshah heard this, he wept sore, and said to the Sheikh, O my father, how shall I do get back to my native land? Replied the old man, Know, O my son, that thou art near to the mountain calf, and there is no departing for thee from this place till the birds come, when I will give thee in charge to one of them, and he will bear thee to thy native country. Meanwhile, tarry with me here, and eat and drink, and divert thyself with viewing the apartments of this castle. So Janshah abode with Sheikh Nasr, taking his pleasure in the wadi, and eating of its fruits, and laughing and making merry with the old man, and leading a right joyous life till the day appointed for the birds to pay the annual visit to the governor. Thereupon the Sheikh said to him, O Janshah, take the keys of the castle, and solace thyself with exploring all its apartments, and viewing whatever be therein. But as regards such a room, beware, and again beware of opening its door, and if thou gainsay me, and open it, and enter therethrough, nevermore shalt thou know fair fortune. He repeated this charge again and again with much instance. Then he went forth to meet the birds, which came up kind by kind and kissed his hands. Such was his case. But as regards Janshah, he went round about the castle, opening the various doors and viewing the apartments into which they led, till he came to the room which Sheikh Nasr had warned him not to open or enter. He looked at the door, and its fashion pleased him, for it had on it a padlock of gold. And he said to himself, This room must be goodlier than all the others. Would heaven I wist what is within it, that Sheikh Nasr should forbid me to open its door. There is no help but that I enter and see what is in this apartment. For whatso is decreed unto the creature, perforce he must fulfill. So he put out his hand, and unlocked the door, and entering found himself before a great basin, and hard by it stood a little pavilion builded all of gold and silver and crystal, with lattice windows of jacinth. The floor was paved with green beryl and balass rubies and emeralds and other jewels, set in the groundwork mosaic fashion, and in the midmost of the pavilion was a jetting fountain in a golden basin full of water, and girt about with figures of beasts and birds, cunningly wrought of gold and silver, and casting water from their mouths. When the zephyr blew on them, it entered their ears, and therewith the figures sang out with bird-like song, each in its own tongue. Beside the fountain was a great open saloon with a high dais whereon stood a vast throne of carnelian, inlaid with pearls and jewels, over which was spread a tent of green silk, 50 cubits in width, and embroidered with gems fit for seal rings, and purfled with precious metals. Within this tent was a closet containing the carpet of the Lord Solomon, on whom be peace, and the pavilion was compassed about with a vast garden full of fruit trees and streams, while near the palace were beds of roses and basil and eglantine and all manner sweet-smelling herbs and flowers. And the trees bore on the same boughs fruits fresh and dry, and the branches swayed gracefully to the wooing of the wind. All this was in that one apartment, and Janshah wondered thereat till he was weary of wonderment. And he set out to solace himself in the palace and the garden, and to divert himself with the quaint and curious things they contained. And first, looking at the basin, he saw that the gravels of its bed were gems and jewels and noble metals, and many other strange things were in that apartment. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 509th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Janshah saw many strange things and admirable in that apartment. Then he entered the pavilion, and mounting the throne, fell asleep under the tent set up thereover. He slept for a time, and presently awaking, walked forth and sat down on a stool before the door. As he sat, marveling at the goodliness of that place, there flew up from mid-sky 3 birds, in dove form but big as eagles, and lighted on the brink of the basin, where they sported a while. Then they put off their feathers and became 3 maidens, as they were moons that had not their like in the whole world. They plunged into the basin and swam about and disported themselves and laughed, while Janshah marvelled at their beauty and loveliness, and the grace and symmetry of their shapes. Presently they came up out of the water and began walking about and taking their solace in the garden. And Janshah, seeing them land, was like to lose his wits. He rose and followed them, and when he overtook them, he saluted them, and they returned his salam. After which quoth he, "Who are ye, O illustrious princesses, and whence come ye?" Replied the youngest damsel, "We are from the invisible world of Almighty Allah, and we come hither to divert ourselves." He marvelled at their beauty, and said to the youngest, "Have ruth on me, and deign kindness to me, and take a pity on my case, and on all that hath befallen me in my life." Rejoined she, "Leave this talk, and wend thy ways." Whereat the tears streamed from his eyes, and he sighed heavily, and repeated these couplets. she shone out in the garden in garments all of green, with open vest and collars and flowing hair beseen. "What is thy name?" I asked her, and she replied, "I am she who roasts the hearts of lovers on coals of love and teen. Of passion and its anguish to her I made my moan. Upon a rock," she answered, "thy plaints are wasted clean. Even if thy heart," I told her, "be rock in very deed, yet hath God made fair water well from the rock, I ween." When the maidens heard these verses, they laughed and played and sang and made merry. Then he brought them somewhat of fruit, and they ate and drank and slept with him till the morning, when they donned their feather suits, and resuming dove shape flew off and went their ways. But as he saw them disappearing from sight, his reason well nigh fled with them. And he gave a great cry and fell down in a fainting fit and lay a-swooning all that day. While he was in this case, Sheikh Nasr returned from the parliament of the fowls and sought for Janshah, that he might send him with them to his native land, but found him not, and knew that he had entered the forbidden room. Now he had already said to the birds, "With me is a young man, a mere youth whom destiny brought hither from a distant land, and I desire of you that ye take him up and carry him to his own country." And all answered, "We hear and we obey." So he ceased not searching for Janshah till he came to the forbidden door, and seeing it open he entered and found the prince lying a-swoon under a tree. He fetched scented waters and sprinkled them on his face, whereupon he revived and turned. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening. I'll see you soon next week. As usual, remember to go inwards instead of outwards.